Hey there. Eli is out of town this week, so I've invited Aaron Wilt, who's a very good friend of mine and a small business owner, to join us today on AI at Work. Aaron, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. It's kind of a random thing to jump on and do together, and I love being here. And thanks for the opportunity. So a little bit about me. Classically trained, I guess you could say, as a programmer way back in the Stone Ages of the early 2000s. Used to do Java web development for enterprises all around. In the evenings when I was doing consulting, picked up online poker, started doing better at poker than I was at programming. Did that for 10 years professionally. Kind of toward the end of that, I kind of saw AI coming, not necessarily AI in the way that we know it now, but saw it in the poker circles. I used to be able to beat the bots at poker, and then it was getting to the point where I no longer could. And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall there. Shifted to the next thing, which was e-commerce, which of course is where we met. We met in China at the Canton Fair, and online, some e-commerce groups. Then have been doing that now since 2015. Well, I'm coming up on 11 years. Actually, 11 years, June 1st.
So Aaron isn't giving himself enough credit. One of the reasons that I wanted to have Aaron on, in part, it's good to have a gut check of actual operators and what actual operators are doing on the ground. And Aaron is really an interesting critter because he has a way of thinking about things from a systems perspective that goes far and beyond the sophistication of most organizations that are out there. So I think it's a pretty good opportunity to calibrate on where a highly skilled SMB type operator sits as far as the AI evolution is right now, and all of the frustrations that come with that, because it's certainly not a perfect point in time. Yet the media is telling us, oh, everybody is just like killing it in all of these different directions. And the reality is far, far more jagged. And Aaron's company is actually 40 people strong. So he's a pretty good representation of larger small businesses, I would say, kind of even getting close to mid-market type businesses and where they sit. Because I suspect that if Aaron could snap his fingers, he would have AI built into every corner of his business. Right, Aaron?
Yeah, it's a real struggle because you see all this power, right? You see the power and what it can do, and especially you have some of these. I think each of us in our own way has kind of had some of these like aha moments where ChatGPT or Claude or whatever came back with something that is like, oh man, I didn't think about that, or oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted, and it came back like that. And I think once you kind of get that moment, it's hard to let go of that, and especially tech guys, kind of like we are, and so. But getting everyone to have that moment, is hard. And I know some folks, like more creative minded folks on my team, have been resistant to that because they'll be like, "Oh, I asked it to do this. I asked it to put our supplement bottle on this woman's hand, and it like she had six fingers. Like this is garbage. I'm out." And it's like that's kind of where they stop, and getting over that hump and getting them to the point where they can really buy in, I think is one of the challenges. And that analogy is across all different parts of the business, not just creative, of course.
So I like to think about AI in terms of sort of the eras that we're going through, and I'd love to get your reaction on this. You dove in right away, like the very beginning of 2023. We were talking about this. I was in 2022. That first bit was this chatbot era where it was using the chatbot to do kind of interesting things. And in retrospect, it wasn't as cool as it felt at the time, but chatting with this like super intelligence that helps to give you some feedback, or to help you polish an email, or maybe look at a little bit of data, or maybe make a six-fingered otter, or like whatever it is. And then about later 2024, 2025, I like to think that we got into the context era, where it was more about making sure that the LLM, the chatbot, had information from different corners of the business such that it could understand more about you and about your business and to be more effective. And we kind of started calling that context engineering. And now in 2026, there are two different things that are happening. Well, there are a lot of things that are happening, but one is that we're entering this era of orchestration where those individual pieces of context and the chats are now being drawn together via agentic systems like OpenClaw or Claude Cowork, Claude Code, Codex. You were talking about Hermes at the beginning of the call as well. And that's kind of changing things as well. So maybe just react to that as far as the arc and what you've seen in your own business and how that's played out for you as a highly technical operator with a team who is less technical.
Yeah, I think the interesting part of that whole arc is I think there's kind of like the way I think of it is there's kind of one thing that ties all that together. And I think that it's I don't know the right term. Maybe you have a term for it, but it's basically like the percentage chance that the AI is right. Okay. And so at the very beginning of the chat, right? Like the percentage chance that AI is right is maybe, I don't know, let's say 80% back in like 2023 or something. It's going to say some stuff and maybe you can keep 80% of it, you got to dump 20% of it. And then as that gets up to like 85%, we start trusting it more, or maybe a little bit 90%. And then now all of a sudden you can start abstracting that out, right? So it's like, okay, now it's getting right often enough. I just need to make sure we give it the right stuff. And then that's going to make it right more often. And then I give it the right stuff. And then I give it a little bit of like guardrails to orchestrate it. And then now all of a sudden you know, it can take that, 80, 90% of being right and apply that to another thing that can be 80, 90% right. You can apply it to another thing that's 80, 90% right. And so then I think that's how it kind of grows, like, because, it's all in a way probabilistic. I think that the it does allow you to do more, and the same problem still exists where the human needs to understand which part it can use and which part it needs to dump. And I think where a lot of this ends up going off the rails is when the calibration of how much you trust it is way off. So if you trust it too little, then you're not getting the value. If you trust it too much, you're going to get burned. And so you got to have that right amount of where you put that dial, and that's where it takes human expertise to get the maximum out of the AI.
Okay, so there's a bunch there that really resonates with me. Number one is we do a lot of AI training. So we go into organizations and we work with them. And I'm still almost obligated to do what I call AI 101. And AI
Mm,
101 is doing at least a basic dive into what a neural net is and what a large language model is, because that probabilistic nature of it that you just cited is really important for people to understand. They're used to going into a deterministic model like Excel, where 2 plus 2 equals 4 every single time, and it's coded that way. And it gets
mhm.
them into trouble because they don't actually realize that the drift, the hallucination is actually part of the magic that makes all of this work. But it's both a feature and a bug. And if you don't enculturate people into that understanding, they get into trouble in a hurry. And the other place where they get into trouble in a hurry is by operating outside of their sphere of knowledge. So, you and I know a ton about digital marketing and products and like all of these other things, but we probably don't know a ton about particle physics. Well, you might, I don't know.
I do
Um,
not.
and if I could probably ask an LLM to explain how, particle physics works at a 10th grade level, but I have no way of validating whether or not that information is accurate because I don't have the fundamental knowledge to gut check it. And it's another place where people get into trouble. And you think about a new employee, you wouldn't assign them something really complicated and just set them loose on it. You'd
Mhm.
want a manager or somebody to be gut checking them along the lines, right?
Yeah, and well, yes, and I would like to hire people who kind of have that natural skepticism in a way, right? So again, it's like that dial. It's like you got to be. Both of us are kind of skeptical guys, and I think we use that power for good. Some people are skeptical, use that power for bad, but some people are so optimistic and non-skeptical that they just trust what anybody ever says. And so it's like you can't trust the LLM, just like you can't trust the person, who you're talking to, the consultants that you hire blindly, right? You have to make sure that you take what works for you and your business and what works based on your starting point and frame of reference, and then make the best choice you can. And I think it's the same way with LLM. So it's teaching that young person or that new employee what questions did you ask? What did you get back from the LLM? Does that gut check make sense? If you don't know, go find the person who knows and run that by them, right? It's like, hey, is this am I on the right track here?
So I want to talk a little bit about your team and how you've enculturated AI. 40 people, a lot of them I know are sort of back office and whatnot. But what does AI usage look like on your team? What sort of licenses are you using? What's your tech stack? What does a day in May 2026 at Pulse V look like?
Yeah. So I would say that usually I am on more of the bleeding edge of the stuff. I want to be the one trying things, breaking things, figuring out what can be done. I hired a pretty good programmer from Eastern Europe who's also like very AI pilled. He loves it and really good guy, smart guy. Uh, I'm I'm for him, I'm trying to dial him back to like, okay, the AI tools are good. They're the tool, they're not the answer. Whereas other people on the team, I'm trying to dial them up, being like, hey, you didn't even ask Claude, like at least run this by Claude before you bring it to me, right? So I think we're kind of all on the spectrum, literally and figuratively, we could say. A typical day for me would look like I have, like right now before we recorded this, I've got 5 Claude Code windows open, 2 Codex CLI windows open. I am right now myself pulling in a lot of our e-commerce data into Google BigQuery, setting up those connections to stream and automate that. We're using some server side tracking tools for our Facebook ads and Google ads and things like that. So I'm trying to make sure that all that data is getting to the right place so we can do good reporting. My goal for that is to then be able to give my marketing team like really good reports that they can trust, because it's hard to trust Facebook portal. It's hard to trust any, Google Analytics, et cetera. So my dial for AI there is I want to be all in on the tech. I want to be able to just hand this thing to somebody else, let them use it. AI help me get there faster. For others, like maybe the graphics team and the content team, I want them. We have a couple of gals are really bought in, a couple of them not quite yet. So I'm trying to have the gals that are really bought in show what is possible. I'll make some videos about here's what I did, here's how I got there. Again, try to like show them the path that way. So it's more like content, imagery, things like that. They jump around. They use Gemini some. They use the ChatGPT image generator, the one that came out recently. They use that, not as much on Claude. And then last but not least, we got some folks that work in product, I guess you could say like product design, compliance. We do some things with medical devices. So we have a lot of compliance work. And some of those folks are not classically trained in any of this. So they are very much put this into Claude, put this into ChatGPT. Where does the Venn diagram overlap? Where are they separated? Get all the questions I can get so that when we go meet with our consultant on Wednesdays, we have good questions to ask to like double check. Is this right? Is this not right? And then we're also redoing some of our quality management system with some of these tools as well. So we're I don't know if that answered your question, but we're all
No.
over the place on all that.
So I'm going to push a little bit. So you mentioned basically every platform, and my listeners will know that I have to use basically every platform too, because
Yeah.
although they are sort of converging, they have different strengths and weaknesses for different things. But are you using like an Anthropic Teams setup and shared projects, shared chat, shared context, that sort of thing, or is it kind of all over the map?
It's kind of piecemeal for us. I'm not against doing the teams kind of aspect. It's just, like for me and the one programmer I was mentioning, like we want to be on the latest thing regardless. We both got like a $200 a month plan. Like that's just ours. I got one for him. That's just his. And we go fast. The others, we let them lag behind a little bit because most of what they're doing, it doesn't need to be on the bleeding edge necessarily. It just needs to get them down the path faster. So that's kind of where we've drawn that line.
Okay. Have you baked it into performance? Anything like that, as far as organizational like adoption and putting carrots and sticks alongside of it?
Not as much as I wish we would have or could have. I think Kevin kind of knows me as like a doer more so than like a manager. And I think the AI kind of feeds into that trap a little bit. Sometimes I have to pull myself back out and be like, okay, let's make sure we're looking across the org and doing things that will drive the whole thing forward. But for us, I haven't done a whole lot with using it to help manage other than my side project is I had OpenClaw for a while, trying to get Hermes going to ingest a lot of our like Asana data, Slack data, and then have me ask it questions about what different folks are working on at a given time. That hasn't, it's not good enough for me yet to like let it loose. So that's still kind of passion project, I guess.
So I like to say that AI can generally do three different things. It can replace tasks, it can augment tasks, or it can create new capabilities. When you and your dev are leaning into these projects, which categories do you think you're focused on the most as far as those three?
Okay, so run it by me again. So what are
So
those
so
here?
it can replace tasks, so that's like workflow replacement. It can
Mhm,
augment, as in
mhm,
now that individual can do a heck of a lot more than they did
yeah,
previously, or it can create new organizational capabilities. So what you were saying earlier, as far as the rabbit hole that you're going down right now, as far as doing, marketing, data absorption, and things like that, you would have had to pay for a SaaS for that a
yeah,
few years ago. So now you're developing a new capability that you didn't have before. And in that case, that's obviously internal operations. But does that
mhm.
also hit a point where you're a direct consumer business, so reinventing what it means to be a direct consumer business might be a little bit challenging. But of those three, where do you think the most effort is being spent?
Yeah, for us, definitely augmenting. I mean, I think that's the real win, honestly. Like, I think that's, I don't, for me at this 2026, I'm not in the camp of like AI is replacing all of our jobs, at least not today. Okay. Today, it is AI is taking somebody who's a winner and making them win harder. Right. And it's taking the loser and it's probably going to lose harder because they're just going to copy and paste and be done. Right. And then they're going to get in trouble and it's going to be all fine until it's not. So for me, getting the AI in the hands of your winners and letting the winners run really fast, that is the way. And then to your point about new capabilities, yes, I would keep that for me and some of the highest, like my programmer I mentioned, the one particular guy. I have a couple programs on staff and I'm letting them do some of this too. But primarily me and this one particular guy are really trying to push the envelope on capability because of a control thing. Like I want to make sure I see it and I don't trust it enough to just blindly let it go.
So your organization is small enough that you can have that sort of central control in that you see, okay, there's an opportunity over here. I can lean in with one of my people that have competency or yourself to lean in, solve the problem, and move on. But in larger organizations, I think it gets pretty hard. If you were four times your size and you had
Yeah.
40 people in four different verticals, how do you think you might think about how do you amplify like a sales vertical or something like that? What's the right approach organizationally? Do you teach everybody on that team to fish such that they're like running around doing things, or do you teach them to at least identify where the fish are and then bring the fisherman team in to do it? I'm like killing my metaphor there, but
Yeah.
it's that idea of do you build that capacity and allow people to run, or does that actually work? I
Mhm.
have opinions about it, but I'm curious about what your opinion is.
I think, I think right now, well, I think in the future, I think letting people run and like really going from kind of ground up and letting the experts like really flourish with the AI tool in their pocket. I think in the long run, probably that's where it will be and that will be okay. I think right now it's not quite there yet for me. If I had if my organization was four times bigger, what I would want to do is I would want to, and I'm still trying to do this even at my size, but I'm trying to like get people involved, see what they do. Some of them are going to take to it right away. Some of them are going to go kicking and screaming. Find the people that take to it right away. Make sure that if I generally find that there's two different kinds of people, right? More of the like skeptical, technical, like, I want this to multiply me kind of people. And then the dreamer kind of people. They're like, oh my God, the world is changing. This is going to be so amazing. I think you kind of, right now, I think you kind of need both because you need the dreamer to like push and see what can we do. And then you need the like more skeptical, like logical kind of person to be like, okay, here's the best we can do right now. Here's the part where it's like, we still need you to make sure this thing doesn't go off the rails. And I think if you can build your organization in a way where you get those two personalities really working together, I think the magic can happen. But I think if you constantly let the like skeptical guy like always be the naysayer and you constantly let the dreamer constantly dream, I think either way you're gonna not like maximize and you're gonna get into trouble.
So let me give you a specific hypothetical. You do high volume on Amazon, and Amazon
Mhm,
is super fun to deal with, and there are a lot of different types of file types that float around for different products and things like that. Highly administrative, and you have
mhm,
somebody on your team who's like in that. I'm not going to call them dreamer, but they're excited about the technology. They're excited about amplifying themselves. Are you just going to let them reinvent some core process in the business, or what are the checks that are in place so that they know kind of the limits of the things that they can mess with and the things that they don't? Because I'll take an enthusiastic like tech adopter every day, but boy, you could really break stuff in a hurry if you're dabbling in places that formerly, just rank and file people would never touch these data structures. And now we're
Hmm.
like, hey, cool, go and reinvent your job.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong, right? I mean, in your business, it could be millions of dollars. So how how do you think about controls as far as access and project design and et cetera in that respect?
Yeah, good question. This came up actually over the last few weeks. So we've got a really smart guy on our Amazon team that runs the advertising, and he uses some different tools. And some of these tools actually have their own MCP. So he's like, "Yeah, through this thing and this MCP, and it told me this, and here's what I got." And it was like in his Asana report. And I'm like, "Well, did you verify it? How do you know it's right?" It's like the simplest question, right? Like, how do you know it's right? So from the leadership point of view, and if you're trying to build this team, I think you got to like ask that question. I mean, it sounds like so stupidly simple, but it's like, do you know it's right? And then, you get that blank stare back, right? And it's not because the guy is a bad guy. It's not because he's trying to be, but he's excited about the thing and wanted to show me what he found. And it's like, well, that might be right, but it might not be right. And which part is not right? And so when you get into these things of like, I'm just going to dump this like 50,000 row Excel file into like somebody else's MCP server that's going to hopefully like give me some, gold back. I mean, it's just like, okay, all right, let's check ourselves here for a second. So, but I don't want to discourage the guy. I just like, okay, how do we find ways to validate it? And I think that's really, kind of back to your earlier, like three points of value. And I think, um, one of the ways it's going, and one of the ways I'm sure you see it going too, is like finding the parts that you can use AI to make it deterministic faster. So it's like this whole big process, right? Which parts can we make deterministic? Okay, maybe it's only this 30-40%. Can we use AI to make this 30-40% deterministic every time right away so that part doesn't change and we save our brain power for the judgment part that we need? And I think that's kind of how I think about it and what we've run into. But yeah, like I told the guy, I was like, you got my credit card. So let's make sure that we do it right.
So I want to roll back to that point for just a second. We talked about deterministic versus probabilistic earlier, and that is really, really important when you're dealing with a really big process. Is how can you break it down into parts that are basically digitally mechanical, as it
Hmm.
were? And it's sort of the way that coding has worked up until recently, and reserve the variability of the AI for the part that you need to reserve for the AI. So I like to call it like the spaghetti bowl approach to data. If you've got this giant bowl of like advertising data, and yeah, you can have a large language model go look at that data and parse the data and make conclusions on it. And it will probably do a pretty good job of that. And that's fine for developing some quick insights. But if you're going to do like a regimented data based approach to marketing analytics or something like that, you want to be doing more traditional approaches to data parsing to cut that data down such instead of being a spaghetti bowl, it's like one little meatball. And you're going to focus on that one little meatball for the LLM level. And then you need to decide how risky is it to my business if this is way off?
Exactly.
Marketing exercise, probably not the biggest deal in the world. FDA compliance, really big deal. And it has to be
Yeah.
right every single time. And, teaching people how to make that judgment when media in the world is telling them that, hey, it's just this magic machine that you can get any information from is it's a learning process for sure.
Yeah. I was talking to an old employee about this the other day. I sent an email to him and was like, some of the ways you can think about it is like, am I okay with 85% right? If it's 85% right, am I okay with that? And, if your job's on the line and you're like trying to report to somebody, if you're like a whatever VP of whatever, and you're trying to report to this or that, and like, is 85% good enough for your job? And
Yeah.
maybe certain types of jobs, maybe it could be right. Like, so where's the fail safe, right? Like customer service. Okay. On any given email is 85%. good enough. And it's like maybe on any given email it is, because if you go off the rails and somebody complains, you just refund their money, and it's like, okay, we're all happy now anyway. No harm, no foul. So maybe 85% is okay. But to your point, like FDA compliance or something related to analytics that other people are dependent on, and that 85% that other people downstream are depending, maybe 85% is not good enough, and that's we actually, so we're redoing our inventory system with this program we're in. That's an example of that, right? Where that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars across the year of decisions being made based on this thing. So we're not leaving that up to the LLM. We're trying to make sure that each part of the puzzle is deterministic in its right way.
Okay, so you just sort of teed off what's a sort of a pretty hot button topic, which is the idea of the SaaSpocalypse, as people like yourself are looking at your processes. And it's not like you dislike some of the SaaS partners and vendors that you have in place. You just recognize that you can do the thing that you've always wanted to do now. And
Mhm.
what do you think that that means as far as, if you were to prognosticate on the future of sort of mid-market like SaaS, are people like you going to nibble out the bottom of the market, or will SaaS find a way to reinvent itself such that it's headless, or whatever the approach is that allows it to persist and continue to add value?
Yeah. I don't want to give a non-answer, but it is kind of all of it. So let me say why I think that. Number one, like creating software is really hard. Doesn't matter if Claude Code is grinding 5 agents at a time to do it. It's really hard because I heard this guy the other day say, maybe you know who says it, who's the famous person said this, but it's like you can outsource the thinking, but you cannot outsource the understanding. And so it's like, yeah, you can have the agents all think about this stuff, but if you don't really understand at a truly deep level of how exactly this thing is supposed to work, you're going to struggle making software. So it's software of any kind of scale, right? So I don't necessarily think that, SaaS apocalypse is going to happen. I do think there's going to be like margin compression for sure. A lot of this is going to come down and people are going to want to pay for the connector to the data. Like you're saying, the headless. It's like, yeah, I'll pay so and so for the connector to the data and I'll do what I want to do myself, because getting that data sometimes and organizing that data in a good way, it can be very difficult. Like, just here's a very basic example: time zones. All right, you got Shopify coming out in Pacific time. You got Amazon UTC. Google a lot of times uses UTC. We live in Central time, so anybody who I want looking at a report, it better be in Central time, right? So you got all these different systems, all these different time zones. You better make sure that every database query is organizing them in the right way. You better make sure, and that's just a very basic thing, right? Just so my marketing people can look at and trust what they're looking at. So that expands out. And yeah, yes, I think there's compression in SaaS. Yes, I think some of the maybe the Zapiers of the world a little bit like get hurt in the beginning because we can kind of make some of those automations on our own. But I think the true understanding of the business, the true understanding of what it should be, that's still highly valuable. No organization can rip out all of their SaaS and know exactly how it should be for all these tools.
So I've been peppering you with questions, but I think it could be helpful for the other business owners who listen to this show to sort of hear the questions that you have. Again, you're pretty far forward in the continuum of people who are leaning into this and quote doing it right. Yet it's still super jagged. So
Yeah.
I see dozens and dozens of companies. What sort of questions do you have for me that might be helpful?
Yeah, I think a lot of my questions come funny about AI is it comes back to the people, right? So it's like, how do we get the people? How do we get the people to have those magic moments? And what have you seen in other organizations? Like when somebody goes from, have you ever seen somebody go from like very anti AI to now being like an AI zealot, where it's like, because sometimes I think those are the people that you really want. It's like the AI crusades, right? It's like if you can get the programmer who's been doing it since you were in diapers, who knows everything about this stuff, right? If you can get that guy to really buy in on AI, I feel like that is like magic. But have you seen that before, and how has that gone?
Sure. I have a keynote slide that I call the pyramid of suck. And it
Hmm.
is like at the very top of the pyramid are business changing ideas, like reinventing the entire way that you do your inventory system and saving millions of dollars a year. Okay. And then at the bottom of the pyramid are simply things that people don't like to do. And
Mhm.
from a human deployment perspective, we tend to hire people based on something that we see that you could say is their like individual genius, be it in marketing or in copy or in image or data or whatever it is. And then we load them down from an administrative perspective with a bunch of craptastic work that they really hate. You don't have like a lot of, well, you do have some B2B type salespeople around. A good salesperson wants to be selling all the time. They don't want to be updating their CRM. So one way to build champions is to solve that person's pain point and to teach them how to solve more of them. And once they break that seal, particularly with the generation of the agentic harnesses right now, it's like a golden age at this second that I think is only going to get better. That all of a sudden cross-platform communication is like it's pretty wide open. So somebody
Mhm.
can be bridging between Asana and HubSpot and Claude and be solving problems all at once. And that's where I'm seeing like that flash of light of, wow, I never have to do this TPS report ever again. Like that is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Have you seen in a like particular, I don't know, like business vertical or particular like department of a business where people tend to have really liked that more? And I guess my question is, have you seen it work better where you have some of the tech guys, the programmer guys, doing that deterministic automation for them and doing that faster and doing more of them? Is that the part that's making like the HR department happier? Or is it more like the HR department now can ask the LLM because it has all this data that they don't have to go bother so and so. They could just ask the LLM. Like, is that the magic moment, or is it both, or how do you see that?
I think it's a really important question right now. We, in our training capacity, will bring people up to a level of capability that they can start solving a lot of their own problems. But it
Mm,
runs right into that wall that we were talking about earlier, as far as risk, data access, platform access, all of these things. So there has to be a pressure release valve that allows the person to solve their problem, because otherwise you're just going to take the wind right out of their sails. Like we sit
mhm,
down, we teach them how to think about this, how to develop new solutions. They've come up with some brilliant idea, and it's brilliant on a continuum. It's going to be have a positive ROI. They can absolutely see that. But the tech team of the company, particularly in larger companies, is so focused on improving their product, and all of their rocket science and all of their dollars are being focused on the AI application at that top of the pyramid, that there aren't a lot of resources farther down to make these things happen. And you
mhm,
see both OpenAI and Anthropic leaning into this with their forward deployed engineers right now. And this is essentially what the big consulting firms are doing for enterprise.
mhm,
But OpenAI and Anthropic are now investing literally billions of dollars in these forward deployed engineers. And the idea is you can parachute them in to, say, a marketing team, and they'll be there on a full time basis and they'll be listening to the needs of the team, and they'll have certain rights and privileges that other people in the organization don't. Okay, that's great. But neither you nor I is going to be hiring OpenAI forward
yeah,
deployed engineers, much less like Accenture, KPMG, or the rest of them. And finding the right skill sets that you can plug into that in kind of a normal, like smaller company that's out there is really, really challenging. People are either completely full of crap or they're just like off the rails, like wild doing stuff, and they basically have no explainability to what they're doing. Or you try and build somebody. So you take Sally in accounting, who's showing that she has like good ideas. Like, okay, cool. Now you're going to go take Kevin's courses, or you're going to like, I'm going to give you the Claude Max plan, and off you're going to go. That is not like a gentle learning curve. So you have this gap. And so you now
yeah,
have identified the problem. You've identified the ROI of the problem, and there's really no great way of solving it at the second, short of Aaron spending yet another weekend like vibe coding your way through. And admit it, you really like it because it's super fun, right?
I
But
do.
but
Yeah.
it's not scalable, it's not sustainable, and people like us are actually like totally burning a candle at both ends because we're trying to solve all of these problems. Because in most organizations, it is that head of the organization who has the flexibility to make the decisions and has
Mhm.
access to all of the tools who can do it. So It is really, really hard right now to break through that, and I think that people there's a risk of disillusionment that, "Cool, I can do custom GPTs." Yeah, okay. There's a lot more than custom GPTs that you can do, but your organization has to decide that that's okay, and they have to figure out what the guardrails are there.
Yeah, I think it's really I think it is a huge challenge, and I think right now the if I had to like wave a magic wand to get this stuff done right now, I think it would be take somebody like yourself who really knows like what's currently capable, right? Take a really excited young developer and then put those two with Sally from accounting,
Mhm.
right? And because Sally knows what it should be, quote unquote. The young, excited programmer, like, hopefully loves working with all these tools. And then you got kind of the person who knows the guardrails of like, here's what can actually work. And I think it kind of takes somebody who's got to play those roles right now. And I'm actually been surprised at how many programmers I have on like freelance guys like out on Upwork and stuff like that still have not sunk their teeth into all of this. Like there's a huge amount of the tech community that is just still like wants no part of all this stuff, which is just mind blowing to me. My uncle has got he works at a software company. He's a really high level guy there, and he has a bunch of programmers like I don't know how many 50 programmers underneath him or something like that. And even he says that a lot of his people just are so resistant to it. I mean, some of them want to talk about like whatever the ecological issues. And some of them want to talk about the moral issues. And then some of them want to talk about the tech issues. And it's just like, I mean, he's like basically at a software company and like a bunch of his software engineers don't want to use this stuff. It's like, what is going on?
So I have a sort of a dirty trick I play when I come in. That's not a dirty trick, but when I'm doing an assessment of a larger company, and they'll say that the organization is telling leadership, "Yes, we're using AI," and you go to the controller's office and ask for the general ledger account for their expenses on like subscriptions and tokens, and you'll see like a 30-person dev team that maybe has 15 or 20 Claude $100 max plans. And it's like, yeah, there's no chance that in a team that big, you're not using many times that amount in tokens and use and whatever. And I'm not really talking about token maxing. That's kind of a
Yeah.
different deal. But being able to identify like what people are doing and what people aren't doing, it's one of the quantifiable ways that we approach it. And CFOs love it, of course.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, there's just such fertile ground out there right now. Like if you're excited about tech, like what a time to be alive. My goodness.
Absolutely. I mean, it is so fun. Like it really is to have all of these capabilities. And you are a dev, so you've been able to build things most of your career, but it's just faster now. So you can like try things and fail really quick and experiment in new directions. And it's, super fun.
Yeah, I think the one last point I would leave is on that is like there seems to be this bifurcation I see. I'm curious if you see this in your organization. It's like the young, like just straight out of college or straight out, out of high school and doesn't want to go to college. Like person excited about that, I think they're very powerful. And I think the person who's maybe from our generation, who like knows how hard it is to like create something out of nothing with the tech and like just sees the power because like I mean I know how many hours and hours of grind code myself like my goodness and now seeing how that springboards it so fast. I think there's some of the folks in the middle who are just kind of like maybe a little lost. I don't know. So I would tend to go for maybe more of the little on the older side 40s 50s programmers and like the younger side like the scrappy young 20s. And I think there's something about the folks in the 30s right now who are just like they seem to be the most resistant for some reason. I don't know if you see that or not.
So we both have kids, sort of comparable ages, and they're
Mhm.
not in college yet. Mine are starting to apply for college. What are you telling your kids?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I would really like to find a good. I mean, the kids are funny, right? Because like no one wants to listen to dad, so I need another dad to like step in
Yes.
and tell them like you need to, you got to do this because they're not going to listen to me, right? So I need somebody else's dad to like come in. But yeah, I think they're really. I think that's another really good. If somebody wants like a side project, what a great side project on how to teach kids the latest and greatest on AI to make it fun for them.
So there's
Because it. Go ahead.
they're opening an alpha school in Park City here in Utah, which is it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that plays out. You know what alpha school is, right? Okay,
No,
alpha
no.
school is an AI forward, very well funded startup that basically does self-directed AI education and then combines that with like social activities. So you're
Mm.
synthesizing the information in the morning as far as the arithmetic and the literature and whatever. And then the rest of the day is around cooperative and collaborative activities that pull the human back in. And I think it's probably pretty rough around the edges right now, but it's also probably going to be very valuable because those human skills, as far as communication and like group management and whatever, ironically apply more to technology right now than they ever have before.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So let me ask you a closing question of what's the tool that you couldn't live without, or a couple of tools that you couldn't live without?
I mean, Cloud Code CLI all day, every day. So that for sure
So
is
Claude Code, okay.
the one. I like Codex too, by the way. I like them both. And actually, I think that there's a lot, you've probably already seen it and talked about it, but the power of battling them against each other, I think is just phenomenal. I mean, Codex has been really good for me lately, finding bugs that Claude did not find, but then Claude can like grind out the code. So that's what I like. Those are the ones that I
For
think we just
me,
draw the line there.
for me, it's funny. I mean, I can't live without sort of the basic integrated chatbot experience since I
Mhm.
run my day through a chief of staff. We were talking offline about that, about being able to do it through like a super app. But for me, it's dictation. I just
Mm.
can't stop talking about dictation and how important that it's been. I use Whisperflow, no affiliation, but I
Mhm.
just looked. I've dictated 1.4 million words in the last like 8 months or something like that, which is tomes and tomes that are coming out of me. Like literally, my carpal tunnel has gone away because I'm like now just
Wow.
dictating everything like I'm working with Jarvis. Well, okay. And if you had any closing pieces of advice for other business owners out there, as somebody who is on this ragged journey, what would it be?
Wow. Closing piece of advice. I would say find somebody that you can talk to about this stuff. A small group, one person, hire a really good programmer. Do something that you can continue the excitement around this, because I think that excitement brings the energy, and that energy helps you push through the obstacles of getting things done and figuring these things out. And I think for me that's just a really important piece. So be part of some AI community, or have like a close AI buddy.
Awesome. Aaron, thank you so much for joining. And anybody else listening, if you have specific questions, please send them in. I'm Kevin at ascendlabs.ai. We want to be as practical as we can. This is called AI at work, after all. So thanks again, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to send us a question to answer on the show, email me at elijah@spark6.com. That is SPARK, the number 6.com, or Kevin at ascendlabs.ai. To learn more about AI strategy and training for your business, visit Kevin's company, Ascend AI Labs, at ascendlabs.ai. And to learn more about design and development of custom AI solutions, visit my agency at spark6.com. You can also sign up for my free newsletter, AI Framework Friday, by visiting spark6.com/newsletter.